Donald Trump has claimed Qatar is backing terrorists on a high level as the diplomatic scandal surrounding Qatar and its neighbouring Gulf states deepens further. Caleb Moppin has more.
Speaking at his press conference with the president of Romania, Donald Trump spoke very harshly against the state of Qatar in the Middle East. This is exactly what he had to say, and it's somewhat similar to what was said by Secretary of State Tillerson earlier. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump said about Qatar.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level. The time had come to call on Qatar to end its funding. They have to end that funding.
Let's go over the facts about Qatar. The country is a monarchy. It has one army base, one U.S. air base, so there's a large U.S. military presence in the country, roughly 3,500 troops from the United States there in total. Now, in response to the situation in which they've been having their disagreements with countries throughout the region, at this point they do have some allies. Now, the Islamic Republic of Iran has agreed to allow Qatar to use their ports. So Iran has come to their aid and is allowing them to use their seaports for ocean cargo and such. And furthermore, we have Turkey that has just announced that, that it's passed legislation allowing it to deploy troops to Qatar. Now, interestingly, not only does Qatar have a strong U.S. military presence in the country, it also has a lot of military contracts with the United States. In particular, Qatar has purchased quite a few Apache helicopters from the United States. There's billions of dollars of military trade and military contracts between Qatar and the United States right now. So as Donald Trump escalates the tensions and accuses Qatar of being a funder of terrorism at the highest levels, we're seeing some increasing divisions in the region, with Turkey and Iran speaking in support of Qatar.
Caleb Moppin, then we can get some more analysis too from Paul Vallely. He joins us. He's a retired US Army general. Good evening, Paul. Interesting, isn't it, to see this sudden turnaround by America on Qatar. Historically, Qatar has always been an ally of the US, but why are we suddenly seeing Trump turn on them, do you think?
Well, I think there's a number of things going on, Andrew. Number one is a result of Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia. And I think at that point, the briefings that occurred there, and as you may remember, Egypt was the first one to outlaw the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. And of course, Saudi Arabia has followed suit, and others. But they've tracked, from an intelligence standpoint, money that has flowed out of Qatar to support Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, who in turn take that money and support terrorism and radical Islam. So it all folds together in a plan, a reorganizational plan, if you'll call it, of allies joining together against Qatar. But we've got to be wary of that, because Qatar, on the other hand, produces a lot of liquid natural gas that's important to some of the other states there. But it's interesting to see Turkey now and Iran lining up with Qatar versus the other nations.
Yeah, sure. I mean, are we seeing a whole sort of reshuffle of alliances then in the Middle East? And why would we see this? I mean, do you think this has taken Qatar by surprise, or perhaps were they trying to forge alliances beforehand, do you think, and this is a reaction to that? I mean, it's confusing, isn't it?
It's very confusing. I think it's the evolution again of countries, including the United States, that have tracked the money flows coming out of Qatar, as some would say, supporting terrorism. And so Qatar has been put on notice, stop. And that's what the message was from President Trump: stop funding terrorism, get them out of your country, get them out of the societies, rub them out, eliminate them, annihilate them. And until Qatar steps up front and vows to do that, or makes a pledge to do it, you're going to see continuous tension between the likes of Saudi Arabia, the United States and Egypt, United Arab Emirates. So, but this new alignment with Turkey and Iran is very interesting.
Paul, I could understand your argument there if Donald Trump is just taking a general stand against terrorism, fair enough, but Saudi Arabia has been accused of funding terrorists and exporting extremist ideology. No word about them.
Well, that's interesting, and I think Trump should have made that point because we know 16 of the 19th terrorists on 9/11 that hit our towers in the United States came from Saudi Arabia. We know there's been elements within the Saudi regime even that has continued to support the Wahhabis and the Salafists who encourage radical Islam. So yes, Saudi Arabia has got to be taken on in that regard, and you can't keep that aside. You must make it a forefront if we're going to take on Qatar as well. No doubt about it.
And just finally, Paul, interesting to see the comments made by Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State. His tone was a lot softer when talking about Qatar. Is there a divergence of opinion, do you think, in the US administration on what to do here?
Well, I think there probably is some discussions going on looking at different options there, particularly when you look at the size of the military commitment that we have in Qatar, including a joint operation headquarters there, Navy, as well as Air Force, and the basing and the refueling that we have there. And so when you consider that and the billions of dollars of military aid that has been negotiated with Qatar, you've got to look at then what our Defense Department and State Department are looking at from the terms of the finances and financials that are involved in these transactions. So you'll probably have some